The new year brings a new session of the Hawai'i State Legislature. What are the biggest issues facing lawmakers this year? What are the priorities? How much will lawmakers spend in the continuing battle to reduce homelessness and fix public schools? What will they do to reduce the cost of owning a home and improve the overall quality of life for Hawaii residents? Join the conversation as we preview the 2019 legislature. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Darrell Huff. When the Hawaii Legislature convenes next Wednesday, there will be 7 freshmen in the 51-member House and 4 newcomers joining the 25-member Senate. The Republican Party retained its 5 seats in the House and claimed a lone seat in the Senate. Issues already on the table include public school repairs and financing, housing, a living wage, and volcano recovery money for the Big Island. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions. And you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guests. Della Al-Baladi is the House Majority Leader. She represents House District 24, which includes Makiki, Tantalus, Papakolea, Mokali, Pava'a, and Manoa. Gene Ward is the House Minority Leader. He represents House District 17, which includes Hawaii Kai and Kalama Valley. Kurt Favela is the Senator-elect from Senate District 19, which covers Ewa Beach, Ewa by Gentry, Iroquois Point, and a portion of Ewa Villages. He's the sole Republican in the Senate. Jay Kalani English is the Senate Majority Leader. He represents Senate District 7, which includes Hana, East and Upcountry Maui, Molokai, Lanai, and Ho'olawe. And let me start with you, Senator English. The state Senate, you've got one Republican. Mm-hmm. How welcoming and open have you been to having a Republican back? Is it a good thing for you guys to have a Republican back?
Well, we've been very welcoming, I think. I mean, we're very happy to have Senator Favela join us, and, we've gone out of our way to make him feel welcome. We've actually sat down and talked a lot about process. A lot of the senators have been stopping in and, offering advice. And so, it's a very collegial environment within the Senate. So for a long time, for the last 2 years, when we were, basically one party, the way you had to look at it is that I really had 5 multi-party systems running within that one party. So now we basically have 6 parties in the Senate, and we welcome Senator Favela. We're very happy to have him.
How are you feeling?
Good.
It's like drinking from a fire hose, I would think.
It's a good learning process, but as the Senator said, it's being very welcome. All the doors open, they come and visit and, give me a lot of, advice in what, to expect. I mean, it's very overwhelming, especially because I belong to the 16 committees to have all of that on your plate and try to juggle it. It's very, welcome. It's welcome because this is what I wanted, right, for my community. I wanted to be there to be their voice. And having all the senators, seriously, I mean, even from the Senate President and the Vice President, they've been very open in their doors and letting me come in and talk and pick their brain. And the Senator, welcomed me into some of his projects and, educating me on some of the, stuff that was happening. And I think it's going to be good. We just have a lot of aloha over there right now.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Yes. You know what? We're very happy, too, because Kurt is also Native Hawaiian, and so we're happy to have another Native Hawaiian in the Senate.
Could I give a minority perspective in the interest of the numbers?
Sure.
You say 1 in the Senate, there's 5 of us in the House. But if you look at 5 out of 51, you got 10%. If you look at Hawaii, 1.5 million, and you've got 10% of that within what we've got here in the House, there is a way of looking at us if saying when we have a Republican running, they get 20 to 40%. Let's say they get 30%, 1/3. 1.5 million, 1/3 is 500,000, which means he and I have got to speak, at least without the votes, for 500,000 people. So I think it's a way of looking at what we have as numbers in the voting versus there are 500. I know your audience is not 500,000 people.
I'm completely lost on your math.
We are one third of the people don't vote for Democrats. Let me be very straightforward.
Right.
We have got an obligation to speak for those 500,000.
The one-third of the population.
One-third of the
who usually are
population
Republicans.
who are not represented.
Well, you know,
just a different perspective.
Let me just
on
throw
what
this
our
out.
numbers are.
Isn't that kind of a challenge, given that, you know, even to function within this body, because the Republican who left the House to run for governor ended up being attacked by her own party for collaborating with Democrats. How do you get anything done if how do you balance
one
that
misstep?
in the House?
Not attacked by her own party. That attack was from a group that is outside of the party.
Well, her own running mate attacked her.
Well, okay, in that sense.
Daryl, can I interject? So just to turn it back to the current legislature.
Where are we here today?
What I would like to make a small correction. You introduced it and said there were 7 new freshman legislators in the House. There's actually 10.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So there's 10 new representatives, and we're very excited to be having them, including one new Republican. I think it's really important to note that that represents a 20% turnover in the House. So we really are going to be getting some fresh and new ideas. And the other exciting thing I would say is that of that freshman class, for the first time, we actually have a majority of women. So I believe it's 6-4.
In the freshman class.
In the freshman class.
What's the ratio in the whole membership?
Oh, I should know this.
Well, let me
we're
ask
better
this
than most states.
Let me ask this question. You know, this is a state that's hungry for new ideas. You talk about these new ideas, but given the structure historically of the House, the leadership tends to be kind of top down. How are you going to be open to those new ideas? How is that going to be different?
So the House is engaging in a very new and different approach to the budget that actually, I think, speaks to the fact that there is more sharing of power. Chair Luke of the Finance Committee is turning over the budget to the subject matter chairs and is encouraging them to vet each budget. And so I think what we're seeing is not a top-down leadership, but really a shared leadership with this new
That's an idea
team.
whose time has come. It's something that we introduced years ago to do zero-based budgeting, performance-based budgeting. I'm really happy that that's happening because it shows that we throw money, but we never say, what did you do with it? This is going to cause that. And I've told Sylvia and the speaker that.
Let me ask, though, Gene, Representative Ward, I shouldn't be so informal. How do you manage you mentioned the Republican Party. How do you manage in the environment that is the Republican Party today to work with Democrats when there are many people in the party who say if you even take a vote that leans Democratic or with a majority that you're a rhino, you're a Republican in name only.
We spoke to the party about this. We spoke to the Oahu League. Essentially, I would say 75% of the bills are simply about managing and governing the people of Hawaii. There's nothing to do with ideology or party or things that are there. So when they say, oh, you voted with all the Democrats, well, probably 85 to 90% of the bills are not Democrat or Republican. We all love the state of Hawaii. We all work for the state of Hawaii. And to say that it's political, I think is an over-exaggeration. Plus, some of those people who are saying, oh, you guys are rhinos, that's a mainland right-wing notion which doesn't fit the representation.
Kurt, how are you balancing this situation as a Republican?
Well, I worked with all of these guys previously, especially in the House, Democrat and Republican. But for my community that came out and gave me this victory, a lot of them is Democrat. They trusted me to be that voice, equal voice, not because I'm a Republican and I'm only going to think Republican views. I'm a community person. I'm going to be viewing everything as a community, not as a party or as a Republican or Democrat. So a lot of things that is happening in the Senate that I love is that aloha is there. If you give aloha, you get aloha. And I feel that way because from the ground up, from the people that works in the basement up, you give them aloha, they'll show you aloha. And I'll tell you right now, those are the best people to talk to because they know more about the Capitol than anybody else there.
Okay, good. Now we can start talking about issues because we've got our first question in. Will the legislature engage in meaningful oversight of public safety and also enact measures to curb the state's over-reliance on incarceration? Let me start with you, Senator English.
Sure.
Is that a position of the Senate?
Actually, yes. We've talked about prison reform. We've talked about sentencing reform. We're talking about, how do we get away from the culture of, lock them up and throw away the key because it doesn't work. So for a long time, Senator Nishihara, who's chairing our committees, has looked at how do we do reintegration, how do we help, in our caucuses informally, I'm telling our caucus members, we love the Class C felony, to put that in our bills, and it's like, stop doing that. Stop making everything a felony.
Oh, upgrading misdemeanors to felonies that people go to jail.
Right, because we look at the trend in the bills over the years. We've had 20 years of saying, everybody has to go to jail. So it starts with us as legislators to say, enough. Stop making everything a Class C felony, which is the lowest felony. Start dealing with, how do we make them petty misdemeanors? How do we make them civil fines? And then how do we deal with the root of the problem at the very beginning? So, that's why I think a lot of us are focusing on education. We're focusing on those things that can make the big difference on the trajectory of their life.
Go ahead.
Well, I want to jump in because, for the last 2 years, the judiciary has conducted a pretrial task force, pretrial detention. So I think there's going to be a lot of activity around bail reform as well. And so we're going to be looking at a lot of things occurring with public safety.
Well, on bail reform, there's different forms of bail, but the most used one is cash bail, right? So who does it impact the most? It impacts the poor. It impacts those without the resources to put up the bail. We're looking at other options. I was talking to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs today. They came in with a proposal, a bill that they'd like to say, let's do a non-cash bail. Basically, it's like a promissory note, because then it'll give some equality to the poor that cannot afford the 10% of the bail.
I hear you kind of agreeing, but Republicans have generally been sort of tough on crime.
Well, for me, because for my community, I totally believe that if we had done nonviolent offenders and not being incarcerated, and the felony at the time was $300, now it's $700. I think a lot of people, because when you do the crime, and we also do the time, but some of these people that stole items that they didn't know it was $300 or over above $300, now they're serving a time that they wouldn't have if we had education. Nonviolent offenders now, but because the thing was so low, now they're serving felonies. But to me, I feel that if they're doing it's nothing robbing you. I'm going over and steal your watch. They went in a store, took a sunglasses or bubble gum or whatever. Not a $300 bubble gum, but you know what I mean. They go in there, they steal something, and then everything crashes on them.
Well, they do it 3 times, and now becomes a felony.
Right, but this is a first-time offenders. I talk first-time non-violent offenders. I don't think they should be incarcerated. We have a lot of good people that is in jail that should not be in jail because of their first time getting arrested.
The biggest disappointment is the recidivism rate. When we have 50 to 75% of the people that, quote, we've rehabilitated by making them serve the time, and then they go out and they do it again, which says if you went to the doctor and 3/4 of the time you never got the medicine or got healed, you'd stop going to that doctor. That's how the system is broken.
You're agreeing with what we're saying? Because what we're saying,
I am agreeing.
Yeah, what we're saying is, the system doesn't work, and we have to deal with it very differently.
It's like, why, after hundreds of years of putting people in prison, we've not learned how to rehabilitate or change the heart. We're just, it's like homelessness. We're still kicking the can down the road. We spend a lot of money on it.
But do you agree that with the Democrats here that there are too many people incarcerated?
I think that even at the national level, that's true. I was talking to a bail bondsman today. I said, if you were the czar and you had the public safety...
I hope that was an optional conversation.
I was not getting my own bail going. He said what he would do, it'd be cut all the sentences in half. Half the time that these people are getting. And then he would take the Class C and the misdemeanor one and cut it out. And unless you really did something serious, he said, get another and a better way to do it. And right now, we've got so many people on drugs, we don't have enough to even rehabilitate them.
So now we've got a proposal that could come. I don't know if the administration is going to push it, but we've got a proposal for a $500 million new prison. I mean, it's not finalized yet, but do you think that is something that's going to get some traction? OCCC is dilapidated, needs to be replaced. Do you see anything movement there, or are there just other priorities?
I think that the administration is going to have to really come in and make its case. And I don't think it's going to be just a slam dunk. Yeah,
well, we had the same issue on Maui where we needed to build a new prison. And the numbers was staggering. It's like, wait a minute, you're asking for $500 million. We look at the infrastructure we put into the community college. It's 1/10 of that. So, as legislators, we said no. and we sent them back to the board. I think that it's going to be a tough sell. Gene I liked what you just said, because, if we start cutting, like your Bill Bondsman was saying, we really get real about taking out what are felonies, then we would get, I think we would be getting the hardcore criminals.
Kalani, how do you tell the guy, don't do it again unless you do something punitive to change his mind or to wake them up? You can't go and re-socialize at the mother and the...
No. Yes, I mean, it's a very thin balance. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we just have to say, when did I hear this? That the judges judge? I mean, we've put so much constraint on the way the judges have mandatory sentencing, all of these guidelines. I think if we just allow the judges to use their judgment.
Like for me, I always believe education, not incarceration. I really believe that with our nonviolent offenders. I think if we educate them properly and we show them that we care, not a simple program that everything like in moderation. Same with trying to be on a diet. You don't be on a diet for a couple of days or a couple of months. You got to have this education as a long term. You cannot just go over there and say, you know what, we're going to let you out. You got to go to a 6-month program. Of course, they're going to relapse, because getting one job and getting rehabilitated at the same time is going to happen, because nobody will want to rehire them. But if you have a long-term solution, that at the end of that term, he'll be with a new job or educated enough to get a great job. But if we don't do that, we just setting these guys up to fail.
Okay, let me move on. I'm starting to get more questions coming in. Let's do one that's colorful. Illegal fireworks in Hawaii. We just had a heck of a New Year's Eve. Where is the solution here? The police say it's out of control. They can't enforce it. Nobody's sure how they're getting in here. You guys have wrestled with this issue over and over again. Representative Bellotti, do you think that this is something that'll get some attention this year?
It's really about enforcement. So, the counties have already banned it. I don't know what to say except that the counties should be enforcing the ordinances they're enacting.
Drones all over Hawaii. No.
They'll get shot down.
That's probably true. China has banned fireworks, and it works, but they enforce it, and they enforce it.
And then they send them all to us.
Yeah, that's where they all come from, exactly. It's big business. But unless there's a political will, I don't think it's ever going to happen.
I was looking at your district going up on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
I mean, what's it like to be there on New Year's Eve?
Was that illegal for it? The thing is, again, it comes again with education. But the bottom line is, when the counties had made it strict, and then of course you advertise to the public, the police have to see you. It only encourage you to do the crime. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody was being illegal out there, but to me, is that you should not have banned sparklers. I mean, sparklers. Now, we used to use that on happy birthday days, not just special. I mean, it's just ridiculous on how they had restrict the local people that was living here a long time. It was a tradition for us. I don't want no aerials. I'm not for aerials or any kind of bombs in the air, but I like sparklers. I mean, that's good to have.
Well, I just want to share a little bit of how legislation sometimes is made. So when we were passing the first bans, very quickly, in the statute today, there's a ban on flying pigs fireworks. That doesn't exist. So it was the Senate side that, we were saying, okay, let's ban everything. Let's ban flying pigs. And they put it in. Nobody went to check if it actually existed, if there was fireworks called flying pigs. There isn't. So you see, the point I'm making is that there was such a rush to do this. And I don't know if it was completely thought through at the time. I was there in the early 2000s. And they didn't look at the supply chains. They didn't look at who is actually importing it and who is actually making money on it, and which groups are actually doing this.
Who's making all the money off of all this stuff?
So, that's where the business model needed to be examined, not just saying we're going to ban it and thinking that it would stop.
Well, there's clearly a business model now that's generating a lot of illegal fireworks. Yeah.
So it created a black market, and the black market is very, very lucrative.
It's healthy. Okay, another question that you guys were dreading, so I'll ask it. How do you intend to manage the process of gut and replacement for the bills? let me just throw out the gut and replace is a term that's been used, but it basically means, you explain to me what you guys consider gut and replace.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's very simple. You know, the Constitution says that the title of the bill must relate to its content. And this was when in the Constitutional Convention, they debated this for a very long time. And it was very, very concise. They said they did that knowing that our hearing process, the bills will change. Because when you hear somebody's opinion, it's, we didn't think about that, let's add that in. Let's take this out. But the safeguard is that the title must always relate to its content. So the premise of what the colloquial term is gut and replace is to allow for a bill to evolve
to
as
be
it goes
changed
down.
at the last
to
meeting.
be changed as it goes through. It can be changed anywhere along the way.
But wholesale change at the end is not fair, and that's where the League of Women Voters, if they're watching, they got a good lawsuit going on saying, legislature, you shouldn't do that. The Constitution said you should have 3 hearings. Once they got in replace and is in a conference committee, done deal, up to the governor, it's already the law.
Let me ask Gene Ward, as a Republican who, you're on a lot of those conference committees, unless you vote against something there. You can't be on the conference committee, right?
Yeah, all of us are.
What have been your most dramatic experiences with seeing changes at the very last thing where you don't think there were hearings on an item? Have you seen that a lot?
When you mentioned conference committee, the most memorable thing is where you're basically a silent dummy sitting there and only chairs speak. And having not been a chair of a conference committee, it's kind of like you have no say, and we're just there kind of in show. Now, some of the bad things that have happened, I was, before the show, talking about the great stuff that happened with gut and replace. And my sense is that if we didn't have gut and replace, people would be more transparent, more open, more frontal in the legislative process, rather than, hey, keep that title and then later on we'll sneak it. Because these bills that are being replaced with, generally speaking, are bills that died, and they may then take it. Some bills they put in just for the sake of the title. I think we can do without it. Bottom line, she'll defend it.
Let's put some real facts on the table. The gut and replace bill, the best gut and replace bill last year was the funding for the Kauai relief, where the floods happened, and then in conference committee we identified a bill, and there was no hearings on that. That was the ultimate gut and replace. So I would say that if the Supreme Court rules against our ability to have this flexible tool to be used, we will see a lot of bills and agencies where they're gonna have to return monies to us. So I think it's you know, we need to be very cautious with it. What you have to understand is that the ultimate safeguard is that every bill has a 48-hour notice period. So in that instance with the Kauai bill, the public had 48 hours to weigh in. Members had 48 hours to weigh in. No single individual voted against that bill. So I think we need to be very careful about saying what is good or bad. And the second set of protections against the more egregious gut and replace, against any kind of nefarious behavior, is that we have internal rules where, you know, we encourage chairs to make sure they post notices. If they are going to use a short form bill, we encourage chairs to post the draft that's going to be inserted. There are many, many ways in which we get a lot of input on all of the bills. So this notion that gut and replace is this nefarious tool is something that I think is very unfortunate. And in fact, the bills that the League of Women Voters chose to pick on, it's just
Well,
PLDC, Public Land Development Corporation, a bill that everybody hated and was vetoed and chucked out because it was a gut and replace bill. The 48 hours, nobody sits and does anything. It's just, okay, you got 48 hours, but there's no institutional way of saying, come on in,
Gene, if
public,
you go back and look at that bill, a number of us voted no. A number of us voted no on
My
that
point
bill.
is they use that non-transparent gut and replace.
But you just only, I mean, you're talking about, you know, a couple bills on the top, and what I'm talking about is a process that we use to make sure that the community, when they come in and talk to us, we can amend the bills to put it in there. Think if we didn't have this ability, then you'd have to introduce the perfect bill at the beginning.
Then we should say it should be for emergency purposes only.
Well, no,
I would agree.
So now you're saying that
for
it works,
emergency
but you want to
purposes.
limit it.
Okay, so I want to,
Kurt Sullivan,
you're the only one here not to experience this yet. Are you looking at it with some dread? Or?
What he gut and replace. I was talking about food. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, that's something that I'm going to be learning, and it seems like it's going to be a hot topic to learn about. But I'm willing to, get educated on it.
Cool. All right, I'm going to move on because I've got a lot of callers and I want to make sure we get to all the questions. Is the next generation of Hawaii going to have to pay off the rail?
Those living on Oahu, yes.
Says the Maui senator. The first of the audits came out today from the state auditor. Basically, it was historic, basically saying that, a lot of these cost overruns maybe could have prevented, but you guys are still having to pay for it, right? Or the Oahu taxpayers are still having, but also the hotel tax is also being laid on it. Is there a chance that you'll have to come up with some more money for them, or?
I don't believe any kind of talk about financing. It's really incumbent on the city and county of Honolulu to determine how they're going to fund the operating costs, as well as the Hart Board and Mayor Caldwell.
I'm going to channel Sylvia Luke saying there'll not be another dollar for that rail unless there's something like hell freezing over. I really, really doubt that it's going to have the political legs to do that.
Okay, all right. Anything on that one? You don't have to.
Beaches for the.
Well, my community, they wanted the rail. I mean, they voted for the rail. But what I'm uncomfortable with is that how we getting the money when we're taxing, with the hotel tax and stuff. I wasn't comfortable with that, being that, because if we're a destination of tourism and we're inviting our tourism to here, and then we're going to be taxing the heck out of them every time they come, and every time we shortfall, we're going after the tourist industry. We got to be more creative as legislators and as lawmakers, and even the city. They got to be able to foot the bill and be able to do their thing, because they cannot always come into the well when the well is dry and try coming over there for more money. They got to be able to budget and handle their own budgeting on how they're going to do this project.
The point is the people of Hawaii feel like they've been cheated. They were lied to. The amount of money that was started out with was 5.1, and now it's 9.1.
Maybe be a little bit more concise. The people of Oahu, because
our
job, and that's the point. This is what I deal with as a neighbor island senator. Everything is Oahu. Our job as neighbor island senators is to make sure that my guys on Maui, Molokai, and Lanai didn't pay for this rail.
And you got TAT from your island.
Yes, we have a part. Well, that's the thing, right? But TAT goes.
It is important to note, though, that Big Island and Kauai have taken advantage of the GET increase on their islands to be able to fund transportation projects on their islands. So I do think, it is up to the voters, and it's the voters.
Another lesson is we should have had Les Kondo do the audit earlier. Of course, he was not in that position, but audits work. If we talk about the DOE.
That issue, though, Senator English, reminds me that HTA has been in the sort of the crosshairs of the legislature for a while, particularly the state Senate, where there's a lot of questions about how much money they have, how they've been spending. What do you see happening with the HTA, the tourist tax? Do you feel like more of it should be diverted to actually mitigating the impacts of tourism as opposed to just marketing for more tourists to come?
Let me just take the part of the question that I want to answer, and that's this, because you had five-part question. Let me just say it like this: the Senate was not happy with the operations of the Hawaii Tourism Authority. There's been changes there. There's a new CEO that's coming in, a new team that's coming in. I think that they're more in alignment with the realities of where we are, which means that, they're looking at how they're going to spend some monies on environmental programs, spend some monies on making sure that the product that we sell is in pristine condition, which means clean beaches, clean oceans. They're saying maybe we should have people that help guide people on trails and other areas. So, there's a new creative thinking coming out of the agency. We are, let's give the new team a chance to try to spread their wings and move forward. I
would echo that. I know that our chair of tourism, Richard Onishi from the Big Island, is engaged with HTA and is looking forward to the changes that are going to be made, I believe.
I personally think we cut them off at the legs a little bit too prematurely. They were doing a great job. If you got a coach who's winning the games and then suddenly you remove the coach because of personality and other reasons and other personal hiring of family members, etc., I think that gets too much into...
Yes, it's called nepotism, which we don't allow.
Which in one case it was one of our own legislators. So the point is tourism has grown almost too successfully And to say we got a problem in that area, I don't. The biggest problem with tourism is the Airbnb and all those political implications.
But Jane,
of
this
our
is the point. That's why I said I'm only going to answer the part of the question that I want to answer, which is
which part didn't you want to answer?
Well, the part that I didn't want to answer was the insinuation that there's something still wrong there. We have to give them the chance.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's why I'm saying that we, let's give the new team a chance. The biggest question that remains out there that really no one wants to touch is the issue of carrying capacity. In other words, we're at about 11 million visitors a year, and we have 1.5 million people living here. So when we plan for roads, we have to deal with what's called the de facto population. The census population says you need a 2-lane road. De facto population says you need a 4-lane road. So we have real carrying capacity issues, and that's where we're going to have big debates.
Senator Favela, when you mentioned, taking away money from HTA and, you need to promote tourism, are you concerned about that? That we may have too many tourists on this state?
Oh, no. I don't think we have too much tourists. But the bottom line is when we take away from them coming to visit, everybody, we're charging more. And then later on, to me, what it is that when we had used the money to bail out the rail, I mean, of course, it's a good thing because the rail has to be done, has to be finished. But I think there was more creative ways of getting the money than just that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's how I feel. I mean, that's my personal thing. Is that not? I think we could have done a lot better than charging more at the hotel industries, because right or not, we're gonna feel it. You know what I mean? The investment is there, but to me, to go attack getting the money from rail, from the cost of the tourists, I didn't agree on that.
So, but one of you did bring up the vacation rental issue. Is that going to be a big issue this year? Is that something you guys feel like you can finally tackle?
I think it comes down like this. Either it's legal and taxed, or it's completely illegal. And what we've been trying to do in the last couple of years is find a way to, how do we get the tax revenues and not deal with the legality issue? So the legality issue is a county zoning-based issue, right? And that's why the state side, we're saying, well, if they pay the TAT and county, you need to figure this out. So I guess the real way that we have to look at it is, county, you guys need to figure out, do you want this or not? If you do, then figure out a way to do it, because the state, I'm speaking on the state side, what we need to do is make sure that if you guys want it legal, counties, that we get our share of the transit accommodation taxes and we get our proper taxation. County's responsible for regulating.
And if the county would talk to the state, we could settle it overnight. But they're kind of stovepiped to where those that are permitted and those who are not permitted and those who are taxed and not taxed, who's got the license, who's got the permit. We've never put the data together. We've tried to get the city and county and the state no tax.
Remember now, there's 4 counties in Hawaii, so you're talking about one. There are other 3.
The majority of it on Oahu.
So I believe the county council in the city and county of Honolulu is taking up the issue of enforcement. We need to see, that needs to be done.
It's still
the
pending,
state, the legislature has already taken measures to address the taxation side, and without the counties doing what they need to do, it's impossible. We're still waiting for the governor who vetoed our bill, who said that he was going to take care of it on the other side, and never happened. So we're just waiting at this point.
The sad part about it is that communities like mine suffer, whether they're legal or illegal. They suffer because the people that live on certain roads in my area, they can't afford the land tax because the 2 houses on both sides is 15 bedroom.
Is that right along the coastline there?
Yeah, it's Ever Beach Road.
Yeah.
Ever Beach Road. We have a problem on Ever Beach Road right now with vacation rentals. Before I knew every single person that lived on that street. Now when you go on that street, you don't even recognize half of the people there. To me, it's hurting the community. And then if we keep waiting, playing back and forth with the city, I understand the state, we have to wait for the city to react. But if we don't act now, this legislative session, and get something drafted or done, I think the community like ours, like Ever Beach and other smaller communities, is going to be hurting.
Senator English, there have been other issues where you mandated the counties to do things about stuff.
Well, by the Constitution, we cannot mandate them to do anything without giving them the money. So normally, if we've mandated the counties, we've also given them the resources. That's by Constitution. So when you say you've mandated the counties to do other things before, yes, we've given them the monies. How can we mandate them to enforce their own laws?
I don't know.
Well, you're asking the question, and I'm asking you. Right. You're telling us, go figure this out, and I'm telling you how. because the county has to enforce their own laws.
Well, I mean, theoretically, you could take the additional taxes you get and fold some back to the counties for an enforcement mechanism.
But why? It's their jurisdiction. Then we get into home rule issues. You want us to are you asking us to overrule the counties and take away home rule?
No, I'm just asking a question about whether you want to.
But these are the implications of the question that you ask.
Sure,
For me, in my district, I have people on Molokai, for example, that before they did Airbnb, they were very, very, very poor. People on the very, very remote areas. And this has actually enriched their lives and allowed them to have a decent living. So, there's two sides to the coin.
That's the good side. Yeah.
Right? And there's people that, there's some, so that's what I mean. We have to decide which way are we going to go with
The
it.
easiest mandate is to have Airbnb submit the taxes, but they've never been able to be mandated to do that, or because of other compromises, they've never been forced to do it, and it goes back and forth, back and forth.
Okay, let's move on. What legislation will be pursued during this session to meet our identifiable goal of 100% renewable energy by 2045? We did a story at Hawaii News Now recently about proposals for carbon tax that are going to be on the table. Majority Leader Belatti, do you see new taxes being imposed or some new system of taxation to push toward reducing our carbon footprint, as they say?
I think the work of the task force will bring that idea to the table. I don't know how far it will go.
What task force is it?
The greenhouse sequestration.
Well, there's a greenhouse sequestration task force. There's also the Climate Change Commission that is looking at the same thing. So we have different state commissions and agencies that are reaching the same consensus that we have to look at this general issue. So when an issue comes like this, it's basically, it takes a couple of years of us vetting the issue very carefully before anything moves. So if you're asking us to predict, I think that we'll have discussion of it this year, and maybe a few things coming out, but in the next couple of years, we'll probably get something.
I think the other fruitful area will be clean transportation initiatives. And so I'm looking forward to the conversations about EV, all those kinds of things.
So,
what kind of specifics do you think are going to be discussed?
How can we encourage the uptake of EVs, electric vehicles?
Charging stations and the distribution of them. For example, I live in Hana, so an EV vehicle cannot make it to Hana and back, and we don't have electricity along the road. So how do we put in the charging stations up to Kokei and Kauai, long stretches on the Big Island? So we have to talk about infrastructure issues and how do we place this before we do widespread.
What are your concerns about some of the
Very, very clear about the carbon tax. Everybody knows what's going on in Paris, and that's basically when you bump the carbon tax.
No, everybody doesn't know. Maybe
well, okay, what's going on? Paris is burning because of the carbon tax of what otherwise the people who had to commute by paying another 50 cents per liter to get into Paris were saying, no way, the small guy is getting pinched by this. Hawaii has 0.75% of the pollution of this nation. We are minuscule. To do a carbon tax is, I think, totally inflated as an issue to tax the people of Hawaii. I think it's a bad idea.
Well, let me give Senator Favela, the idea would be the bigger your car is, the more tax you have to pay, or something like that.
Oh, right now, we're already paying heavy tax on top of our vehicle. Is already weight tax to the city. I mean, we're already paying a lot on that.
$400.
But for our community, we invite voter fete and solar farms because we have the sun. I mean, our renewable energy on our side of the island, I think is great. I think that investment should be more on doing that on our side of the island to reduce that. And I know the city and the state is looking for more energy efficient cars and vehicles. When I worked with the city, I know some of our refuse trucks already was being outfitted with more renewable energy and better diesel. So I think that in the long run, I think if we concentrate on, I think it would be workable. But like for the neighbor islands, I think it would be a little bit difficult for that.
I know you took issue with the way I simplified the idea of a carbon tax. So what would be a proposal that might get some discussion about carbon taxation?
Okay, what would be a proposal? Well, Della, I think maybe you can take this one.
Well, that's why, everyone's throwing around carbon tax, and we don't have the details. So that's why we really can't have a good conversation about it at the moment.
So the idea is percolating and coming to the legislature.
The
but
idea,
we haven't really gotten to the, how would it work for us in Hawaii? So there's other areas that have looked at it and, it may or may not work for us. I want to answer the original question, how we'll meet the how will we meet the goal of 100% renewable?
What legislation will be pursued?
Well,
right?
you know, I can say that I just got a report today from my island of Kaho'olawe, and they are now 100% renewable. With the we allowed them to, we funded the photovoltaic systems to go in, and so they came back today and said, okay, now we're no longer importing the diesel that we used to import on the island, and we are 100% renewable. So the island of Kaho'olawe has met the 100% renewable as of today. That's what they told me. Kauai.
Well, so the boats are going there with.
Well, we have there's a little village on the island, and it operates, and there's a kitchen, and there's dormitories, and it's a small little village, but they used to have to import oil
for generators
to keep all the generators going. So that's all that stopped. The island of Kauai, you know, they're at about 50% renewable now. So the islands on their own metrics are meeting this goal.
Okay, sorry, Representative Ward, but I got a lot more questions. I want to just make sure we do a lot more issues because we've only got about 20 minutes left, maybe a little less. Can we increase the minimum wage to $15 now and not wait for 2 years? That's not even on the table yet, right? The $15 minimum wage.
I think we'll see proposals for increasing the minimum wage, but I think, again, that's going to have to take a lot of conversations. I mean, one of the things that we know is that small businesses bear the burden of both minimum wage costs, but also benefit costs. The Prepaid Health Care Act really does provide workers with rich benefits for health care that I don't think we would want to sacrifice. And so that's the conversation we're going to have.
Gene, on the issue of living wage?
I heard it's not 15, it's 17 and up, given some of the
some people want
lobbies.
17.
Well, actually, living wage would actually bump it up to probably 20-some dollars an hour. But the fact is,
maybe
what she's saying is
$33 an hour.
that everything gets passed on. So in a way, it's kind of cutting your nose to spite your face, because the cost of living is going to go up. And for those who want to have more jobs available when the employers cut back, and then we're opening the area for AI, for artificial intelligence, and those things that are going to take. McDonald's now is almost totally automated in some places on the mainland. We don't want to go that far to take away the option for employment. So you're saying that
higher wages might cost jobs?
It has to go up, but it's got to be moderate, not these jumps of 10 or 15 bucks an hour every couple of years.
Well, how do you feel about that issue?
Well, I think if we're really serious about minimum wage increase, we should start with our government, city government workers. They're working for way less than what we're proposing now at $15 an hour. We have city and state employees are working between $10, $11 an hour. Some of the clerks even maybe less. So if we're serious about, as a state, raising the minimum wage, then we should start with our government workers first and see what happens from there.
Interesting idea. Okay. Do you think the amount requested by the Big Island for the budget is justifiable? This is money the Big Island is asking for relief.
For the lava flows.
Yeah, I mean, is that a state obligation?
Well, let me just, being from the neighbor
island perspective.
You know, this is the thing, right? We have about 15,000 internal refugees in Hawaii, right? About 3,000 from the floods on Kauai, and about 10 plus thousand on the Big Island. And so they're internal displaced persons. You know, our traditional systems has relied on FEMA to bring in monies, and FEMA said no to most of the requests. So, you know, now we have to rely on how do we do it. So I think, the long answer to your short question, I think that we have to be prepared for more natural disasters and have a system in place to deal with it immediately and quickly. And this forces us now to deal with a statewide response. Where I live, I have floods, I have landslides, fires. I have all of these things happening, and I have communities that get completely cut off. Right now, my most remote community, Kalaupapa, is cut off because the whole side of the mountain slid into the ocean. The trail is basically gone. We're in one particular area. So the way that our workers used to come in and out is cut off. How do we make sure that Kalaupapa remains operational? So the short answer then is we have to have a statewide response for the future disasters, and I think that's what the legislature will be looking at this.
What do you think that looks like?
You know, there's so many asks coming, and so I think it's going to be incumbent on the legislators to make their case. And, you know, we're going to be looking closely at where's development going. I mean, if neighbor islands want to continue to develop on lava ones or lava ones, that's not going to work. So I think we're gonna look at those requests, but they're gonna have to be vetted amongst the many priorities. We have the governor who's put in $100 million in his budget for fixing the Alawai, strengthening and hardening the Alawai Canal. We have HHFDC or some of the folks coming in for public housing for $1 billion or for transit-oriented development. I mean, so there's always competing needs, and we'll just have to work it out.
Homes, more houses for Hawaiians is a very important issue.
Let me just continue really briefly with that, though. I mean, do you folks feel like the state needs to provide enough money so that everybody can have a house that got displaced on the...
It'll be hard to say no. I mean, I came in office when Iniki was going. We provided $100 and some million for that. And to say no to the lava to the Big Island, of course, we have to vet them on an individual basis. I know Mayor Kim has got his heart in the right place. He just needs the money. And I think FEMA is going to come through. Some of the relationship between the delegation and the president is probably a bit strained because it's always been adversarial. But I think FEMA will come through, and I think we have to come through with the money to get the Big Island made whole, as well as the flood victims on Hawaii.
I'm supporting our neighbor islands on the relief. If we cannot work as one family and one unit to help each other, then they're saying that we have all the money, and which we probably don't. But if we have to help them, I think we should. But like they were saying, you cannot go ahead and go build another house close to the lava, and it's not feasible. If we're going to invest the money on their new homes or their homes that need to be replaced, then they need to be elsewhere. I know planning them like build the same place, but it's not feasible. I mean, you know what I mean? You're going to keep getting, it's like if your car gets stolen, right? One time gets stolen, how much time do you think State Farm or the agencies are going to pay you for your car being stolen? So it's the same thing. If the state legislature decide to go forward and help out our neighbor islands with their relief, then there should be more creativity in the sense of where they're going to build this subdivision.
That comes right to the next question that we got from a viewer. Why aren't we doing more in this state to combat climate change? Is that not the greatest threat to our islands? We talked a little bit about combating climate change, but also just responding to it is a huge item on the agenda. Gene Ward, I mean, do you feel like we're behind the 8 ball on the climate change issue, given the kind of erosion we're seeing?
I know there are a task force that were put in place by, in fact, Kem Lowry of PUSPA, the Pacific Urban Studies Program. He went through the various neighborhoods. I went to the one in Hawaii. Hawaii. It's where what to do with what you've got on the ocean, and then what to do in the effect of all the future development. It's really about future development and what remedial development may need to be done. I was in Aceh at the big flood, and the tsunami and the earthquake.
For those that don't know, Aceh is in Indonesia.
Aceh is in, oh, that's right, my East-West Center colleague here. And it was like 150,000 people were washed out. So they decided remedially they were going to build berms. Now, I don't see Hawaiian visitor industry building berms, but having been a Peace Corps volunteer in Malaysia, a lot of houses live on the front with stilts. It's very aesthetic, it's very practical, and those who have their oceanfront properties can be considering that. Those that are building highways, the way that some of the stuff on the way to the North Shore, if you go through Kaneohe, is washing out because it was built right on the edge. Some of those things we can do immediately, but it's not going to be cheap. It's going to be a long
Bellotti, what do you think is going to be on the table in regards to response to climate change? I mean, is that a county thing too?
It's not a county thing. I think we've had a lot of conversations about managed retreat, but it's just going to be expensive. So I think we took some small steps last year, requiring that in the planning process that they, when people go through the planning process or the EIS process, that they need to consider climate change. I think in the House, one of the proposals we've put forward is, hey, we know climate change is coming, so now's the time to talk about rerouting the rail, because we know that it's going to go through the areas that are going to be affected greatly by climate change. But all of these things will take a lot of investment and time.
Well, we created the Climate Change Commission that's dealing with this. They came out. You can go online to, their website, and you can type in your TMK, or you can look at an area, and they'll give you a prediction of, 1 foot, half a foot, 3 feet, and they also do it in the rest, the rest of the world measures in metric. But, we have, in Hawaii, we've ended the question of is it happening or not. We're saying yes, it is, and what are we doing, right? So if you read the Climate Change Commission's first report, which is 314 pages, read the executive summary, 2 main points. They say, first of all, yes, it's happening. Secondly, they say we need to do planned retreat. So they've laid the table. Now we have to take the big bite of what is planned retreat? So for instance, yesterday I think we were talking to the Hawaii Business Roundtable, 50 of the largest companies in Hawaii, and posed to them the question, you guys own most of these assets, private assets. What are you doing? And some of them went, oh, wait a minute, it's going to affect us, right? So it takes everybody to first understand that it is happening. It's happening very, very quickly, more quickly than people imagine. So we have to stop using the tense of when it happens because we're in it now. I own a piece of property that's on the ocean, and I'm watching the ocean literally come into my front yard. So, when people say in the future, no, it's now.
Okay, Kurt Pavilier.
Well, I think the state and the city, I went to an event at Washington Place, and I think they're talking about 2045, right? So I listened to what they had to say, and before I came to the Senate, I didn't really think too much about climate change until I went to that event. And I think the state and the city is going in the right direction in a sense. By the time 2045, all the state and city vehicles will be taken away from fossil fuels. So I think we're in the right direction in that aspect. But a lot of people think we should do it sooner. But I don't know if we have the finances and the resources to do it sooner.
We were talking earlier about Ewa Beach Road.
Yes.
And that already has houses where the waves are crashing over the roofs of the houses at high tide. And do you have to get your constituents ready for the possibility that road is going to have to move inland, and something's going to have to happen with those? I mean, is that kind of the catastrophic
That's
things
the
that can
concern
happen?
right now, because on some of the houses, family houses that are on Ewa Beach Road, never had the water hitting their wall or coming over the wall into their property. Probably decades, we've never seen that. And unless it was a storm or a hurricane. But now it's happening pretty much daily. And it is a big concern on that street and other roads.
What do you think should happen there? If you literally cannot have houses there, should they just keep building the houses stronger, or should they have some way of helping the government have some way of helping move these people off the shore?
Well, I see something at Iroquois Point that I was they use it for the erosion. I think if we would put in place in some of the houses that in the area that they could put sand, back that's regular sand that was there.
They build those berms, those T-shaped berms.
Yeah, to stop the erosion. I think that might help the houses that are now. But the ones that they're building later on, I think they should not build it so close to the ocean.
Okay, you guys are going to love this question too. Can we join the Mega Box Lottery?
No.
We can't?
What is it? Mega Box Lottery.
Well, I don't know.
Mega Box Lottery?
I think this is the one that got up to something like several billion dollars on the mainland, and people were
billions.
Driving to go buy tickets. And
you mean, do we want to have gambling in Hawaii?
Lottery. Let's be specific to lottery.
That's been hyped, particularly to go for the keiki and education. And what's happened in most of the states is the money that goes into the education from the lottery, they back out. Legislators back it out. And there's no net gain whatsoever.
We don't have much time left, so let's really quickly, the lottery, why not a lottery?
Because if we do a lottery, legalizes any form of gambling, it allows Native American tribes to buy land, make them extraterritorial, non-taxable within the state, basically sovereign, and we lose.
You agree?
Ditto.
Okay. Your own thought about a lottery?
We talked about it a lot, but we need more. I think we need to get a little bit more educated on the stuff of the lottery.
Okay, so really quickly, the last time through everyone on the panel, school financing. We just went through this traumatic process of having people vote on whether they should, whether we should.
Well, we didn't have people vote. Again,
right,
let's make a
get to
correction.
vote.
We tried.
But I mean, is there a commitment by the legislature now?
There always has been a commitment by the legislature to finance education. Some people don't think it's enough, but we've always been committed to it. If you look at the expenditures of our budgets, education has always been one of the biggest expenditures we do. So how is that money managed? How did the departments do it? That's another story. But our commitment to it is proven in how much we give.
So as far as you're concerned, no new proposals to add money other than through the regular budget process to education?
Well, we'll see what bills come in, right?
You know, the House and the Senate over the interim has been drilling down and asking the department, how are they leveraging and maximizing federal funds? And they are not doing that. So that's going to be one focus for the State House for sure.
The DOE, you got to get more federal funds. I only got 1 minute. Gene,
The minority
30 seconds.
package wants to get rid of any school without books. There's schools going on at this time, but they don't have enough books in their classroom. So what we're going to do is take the 1% of the CIPs, take a percentage of that. That's where the public art.
I have you sum up. So you would
Public art.
increase money directly to schools.
To the classroom.
Okay.
To go there.
Kurt, what do you
For
think?
right now, no.
No, enough money going to schools? Okay. Well, I think that pretty much sums
No,
it
we got
up.
extra time. So there should be an audit of the DOE because they haven't had one since 1973.
So what I'm getting here is that you guys don't feel like you need to throw a lot more money into schools.
See, if you talk to the teachers that live here, they didn't want that, how the process was being done. Because even if they did the way they did it,
Okay.
it would only hurt the mainland.
I got to stop.
Yeah.
I wrap it up. Thank you very much, guys. It was really fast. Mahalo to all of you for joining us tonight, and we thank our guests, Della Albaladi, House Majority Leader, Senator-elect Kurt Favela, the lone Republican in the Senate, Gene Ward, House Minority Leader, and Jay Kalani English, Senate Majority Leader. Next week, we look at innovative housing solutions. Please join us. I'm Daryl Huff for Insights on PBS Hawaii. A hui hou.